How could he have done that? Izuku huffed a breath from his nose, a great plume of white puffing into the brisk winter air. White light shimmered, festive music drifted in the distance, drowned out by the big city din of chatter and cars. It was late evening, and the sidewalks were crusted with snow, but the streets were still packed with holiday shoppers. Izuku was here too, after all. Night was the only time available he had to pick out gifts for his friends and family. His days were filled with school, every other afternoon with internship duties, and nights with his studies. Getting to relax like this almost felt like a vacation. Wandering stores as he pleased, grabbing a hot chocolate and sitting on a cold bench, watching families pass with laughter and joy. It had also felt good to be able to afford presents for everyone with the wage he had made during his internship. He'd even bought Kacchan a present, knowing full well it would undoubtedly be scoffed at. Which led him back to his unrelenting line of thought. Why had he done that? Izuku tucked his cold nose into the thick folds of the scarf Koji had knitted for him. He'd made a scarf for everyone last Christmas, and although Izuku would never tell his mother, it was better than anything she had ever made for him. He could feel his face flame up with a hot blush as he held tight to his shopping bags and weaved through pedestrian traffic. It had been months. More than 3 since the last time they'd touched each other, since the time Izuku had snuck into Kacchan's room, horny and high on the idea that he could seduce his rival. Izuku shouldn't have been surprised that it had turned around on him. No matter how in control he thought he could be with Kacchan, he always needed too much of him. Even when it had looked as if Izuku had been in control, that had only been mindless lust and desire for him consuming him. There was no thinking clearly when Kacchan's voice was in his ear. However, he had to applaud himself for washing him in the shower afterwards with a straight face. He was sure his cheeks had been red the entire time, but Kacchan had remained silent but for barking orders to scrub harder, softer. Here, there, and fuck, there's shampoo in my eyes, you bastard. They had never met each other's gaze, and Kacchan had scowled the entire way through, but he'd let Izuku properly help for the first time in as long as he could remember. And yes, the night did end with Kacchan physically planting his foot on his ass and pushing him out the door, but well, Izuku was happy. Happy and embarrassed. Pausing in front of a school supply store, Izuku peered into the large windows before popping inside. Ochako's birthday was just 2 days after Christmas, and he wanted to buy her a little something extra. Her backpack had seen better days, and since her family was struggling, Izuku thought he could find her a really cute one. A wave of hot air overwhelmed him as soon as he stepped into the shop, and he was immediately uncomfortable in his layers. He pushed his fluffy faux fur hood back and unraveled his scarf, shoving it into one of his shopping bags as he skirted between people and aisles. Spotting the brightly colored wall of backpacks, Izuku made his way over and found himself staring at the unmistakably hunched figure of Kacchan at the end of the aisle. Izuku broke out into a smile and called out his name as he approached, remaining steady and unflinching when Kacchan saw him and made a sour face. "The fuck are you doing here?" Kacchan said, shoving the notebook he'd been holding back onto the shelf and aiming a 5% power glare Izuku's way. He was still pretty delighted that he'd managed to move from 100% power glare in their first year to 5 to 25 power in the third. "A birthday gift for Ochako," Izuku said, gripping tight his shopping bags to keep from nervously fidgeting. "A cute backpack." "Oh." Kacchan frowned and scratched his jaw. Crimson gaze narrowed on Izuku. "Split it with me." "What? Really?" Izuku said, his smile wavering with surprise. "The fuck kind of reaction is that?" Kacchan said, a roar building in his voice as he slapped a hand on the shelving unit beside Deku's head and swerved on his heel until Izuku's back was trapped against the notebooks. Kacchan's face came in close, the red in his eyes aglow with banked rage. "You think I'm a fucking asshole, eh? Eh? Just because I don't go around singing people's fucking praises like the pussy you are don't mean they're not my friends, stupid Deku." Izuku swallowed, his gaze flicking between Kacchan's eyes and his sneering mouth. "Nope, no, I was thinking it was nice, that you're a good friend. Ochako really likes you." Kacchan's heavy breathing immediately slowed. His expressive eyebrows dropped as he stared Izuku down. Briefly, his attention lowered, and Izuku thought his eyes traveled across his freckles before Kashan pushed off the shelf and turned, sending notebooks scattering to the floor in his wake. "Whatever. Let's go pick the thing." "Wait." Izuku scrambled to collect all the notebooks haphazardly, shoving them onto the wall. Kashan, of course, did not wait. By the time he'd caught up, Kashan was already holding 2 backpacks in his hands and looking between them like he was holding poisonous snakes ready to strike. Actually, Kashan would never be afraid of poisonous snakes. He looked at the backpacks like communication and affection. "This one has weird cute animal things," Kashan said, holding both up in each hand with a completely dead inside expression. "This one has food with cute faces." In tandem, they said, "Food with cute faces." As they were ringing up their purchase, Izuku made a little gasp and looked to Kashan. "I forgot. You were already shopping. Were you planning to get something?" "That's none of your fucking business now, is it?" Kashan said between gritted teeth. He ripped the bag the teenage cashier held out and completely missed the way her face had paled to deathly white upon viewing his expression. Izuku aimed an apologetic smile her way and hurried to catch up with Kashan, who had already disappeared outside. He was a little delighted to find him waiting, leaning against the display window, puffy winter jacket zipped up to his chin, hands shoved in his pockets. Kashan slid a look his way upon approach. "Let's get food," Kashan said gruffly. "Oh, I'm sure someone saved us dinner back at—" "I didn't fucking ask, did I?" Kashan said, shooting bloody daggers with his eyes. Izuku felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. His lips curved as he met Kashan's intent gaze and nodded. "Lead the way." Kashan made a noise under his breath, but promptly turned away and began to walk. Izuku caught up, pleased to be beside him. It wasn't all that strange for them to eat together these days. They were both interning at the same office, and as they patrolled together, they also caught lunch together. They ended up eating together 3 times a week, just the 2 of them. It should be strange. It should feel odd to have this rare but still reoccurring relationship in the shadows, and still carry on as relatively normal through the days and months. But it didn't feel that way, mostly. Kashan was so single-minded in his everyday life, and Izuku had been accustomed to following his lead since childhood. If Kashan wasn't going to bring it up, he certainly wasn't. He wouldn't ruin this teeniest friendship he'd been working to redevelop for 3 years. Being by Kashan's side was the greatest pleasure in his life aside from saving people. "Here's fine," Kashan said, jerking his thumb at a tiny ramen shop. "Good idea," Izuku said, following him into the establishment of 1 long counter and 6 stools. "I don't think my body will ever be warm again." Kashan slid a look his way, eyes narrowed, the spot between his brows dreadfully scrunched up. Izuku cocked his head in curiosity, his lips slightly curved, eyebrows raised in silent question. Kashan just rolled his eyes, yanked off his jacket in sharp motions, and threw it on the stool to sit on. Confused by the exchange, but staying quiet because he knew better, Izuku followed suit with his own jacket and sat. Their shoulders brushed companionably, and Kashan's knee bumped against his because the guy had a seriously bad habit of taking up mass amounts of space with his cocky spread legs. They made their orders, both asking for extra pork since their bodies needed all the protein they could get. "You don't have any bags," Izuku said, propping his elbow on the counter and pillowing his cheek in his hand as he angled towards Kashan. "Did you finish all your shopping before?" "Who the fuck do I need to shop for?" Kashan said. By way of answer, one eyebrow quirked as he eyed Izuku. "You nerd." Izuku could feel his cheeks heat. "I guess you don't have to shop for anybody, but I know a lot of the class got you presents, same as they did for everyone else." "I'm not getting something for everyone," Kashan said, clearly affronted by the very idea. "It's not like I hang out with them or braid their fucking hair. I'd be the same off getting a fucking hobo on the street a present." With his jaw clenching to remain shut, Izuku stared down Kashan as his brain flipped desperately through notebook pages on how to convince this jerk to do anything ever that he didn't want to do. 2 years ago, hell, only last year Izuku would have let himself get drawn into an outright bickering war, complete with death threats on Kashan's side. The works. That wasn't to say they didn't argue literally every day, but Izuku was learning how to handle himself as he went along. "All right," Izuku said with a shrug. If you say so. With that, he turned to where his ramen was being set before him, looking up to offer a bright, cheerful smile to the server. As he cracked his chopsticks and started to stir his ramen around, he could feel the unadulterated fire of Kachan's stare against his cheek. Despite their food having been served, he could tell from his periphery that Kachan hadn't moved a muscle. "What the fuck?" he suddenly shrieked, slamming a fist down on the table, sending both bowls of ramen sloshing over the edge. "What the fuck is that supposed to mean? You think you're better than me for buying some ugly goddamn trinkets for a bunch of hero wannabes who are only your friends because they're in the same class?" Izuku made a show of not looking at Kachan and loudly slurping a long, endless noodle. He glanced over, his eyes wide and guileless. He said, his mouth full as he chewed. "Fine," Kachan said, snapping at the bait like a vicious carnivore. "You think you're so good? My presence will blow your crap out of the fucking water. You won't even want to give your shit to him. You'll be mortified. Then I'll laugh at your stupid freckled face." "Kachan," Izuku said, growing a little distressed with the rising disciple of noise his rant had taken on. He looked around the small shop quickly, concerned about getting kicked out. "Please." "What? What? I'll fucking—" Izuku did the first thing he could think of. He slapped his hand over Kachan's mouth. Kachan's face went immediately red, his eyebrows arching into sharp, straight daggers of fury as he went nearly cross-eyed trying to look down at Izuku's hand. "Get a hold of yourself before our food gets taken away and we go home with nothing," Izuku said in a rush, his face close to Kachan's, their mouths separated only by his palm. "Buy the presents or don't, but let's try to have a nice, normal meal between friends, okay?" Kachan bit down on his hand like it was dinner, a rabid growl rising up in his throat. "Ow!" Izuku's hand recoiled, smarting with the fiery imprint already marking the edge of his hand below his pinky. Rubbing it vigorously, he shot out a glare. "You're an asshole, you know that? I feel like I don't tell you enough." "I'm only an asshole because you're a passive-aggressive doormat," Kachan said, returning the glower with one of his own before properly digging into his food for the first time. "That's literally one reason in a list of hundreds." They ate in mostly comfortable silence, only snapping at each other when Kachan tried to steal the egg from Izuku's ramen. For that, Kachan got a stab in the hand from a chopstick. Izuku didn't even apologize for it, even though less than 5 minutes later he kind of wanted to anyway. When they had finished and wrapped themselves up in their winter wear, the sky was pitch black and the streets going quiet. "It's later than I thought," Izuku said, dipping his bare hands in his pockets and wishing for gloves. "Everyone's gone home. I hope we don't get into trouble at the gates." "Oh my god, Deku, they're not your fucking mom. Get a grip. We can just jump the fence." Izuku considered arguing since, yeah, that was the worst idea. He shrugged and met Kachan's eyes with a slow smile. "'Kay, first one to reach the other side is the winner." Kachan's grin was quick and handsome and devastatingly rare. "You're on." Some 20 minutes later, Izuku had eaten his words as they stepped inside the unlit sleeping dorm. "I can't believe I lost," Izuku said, his face screwed up in a pout. "You gotta show me that backflip thing you do." "Like fuck I will. Teach yourself," Kachan said, kicking off his shoes and throwing his coat onto the ground. With a displeased expression towards his back, Izuku collected the coat from the floor and paired it with his own as he hung them in the closet. He shivered a little, still cold as he brought his hands to his mouth and puffed hot air between them. "Gonna be a white Christmas, huh?" Izuku said into his cupped palms, peering over his fingers at Kachan with a smile in his eyes. "Can't remember the last time we had that." "Who cares? It's just cold water. I hate winter," Kachan said, taking steps to break the distance between them. Before he could react, Kachan snatched his hands and curved his own around the corners of Izuku's. Blushing from head to toe, he looked up, finding Kachan's gaze averted and down, concentrating. "What's going— Oh!" Utterly delighted, Izuku felt little fireworks go off around his icy hands. They were such gentle, warm little things, every couple of seconds emitting a golden glow from the sliver of a gap between their hands. "That's— wow." Charmed and sparkling with it from the inside out, Izuku lit up with a smile, tilting his head to find Kachan finally looking at him. His customary frown still tugged at his lips, but his gaze was a little wide, a little dazed in a way Izuku wasn't used to seeing. "You're warm," Izuku said, his cheeks flaring up again as he laughed lightly out of nerves. He was glad his hands weren't shaking. "No surprise, I guess. You always feel so hot when It only occurred to him then how strange it was that the two of them could do all the things they've done to each other, touched each other in the most physically intimate ways, and yet this was something Izuku would never forget in all his life. Kacchan's secret kindness, his warmth, and sharing it with another person. "Come up to my room," Kacchan said, his voice low, deeper, intimate, his attention never wavering from his face. Izuku's heart slammed once, hard against his ribcage, then quickened into a running pace. That was a new type of invitation, too, a terrifying one. Why was he asking now, of all times? If he was looking for a warm body to stave off the winter cold, Izuku was the last person for that. He was practically reptilian. Izuku couldn't help the way his eyes widened as he attempted to read Kacchan's intense expression. "I can't." His hands disappeared from Izuku's, leaving them frigid and barren. "Why, you got better things to do?" he said, his eyes flaring up now, his mouth twisting into a sneering smile. I can't let myself be this vulnerable with you. If Kacchan found out, everything would be lost. This was not a person who desired a close relationship with people on a friendship level, let alone some kind of boyfriend. This was not a person who ran joyfully into the arms of love and affection. He was, however, the type of person who could be a fiercely loyal friend, and fun, intelligent, adventurous, even a role model for tenacity and drive. Izuku could live with that slice of Kacchan. He would not go without this person in his world ever again. "I just need to sleep," Izuku said with a wobbly smile. Kacchan gave no reaction. He raised his eyebrows, shrugged a shoulder, and turned. "Your loss." With his back retreating towards the elevators, Kacchan raised a hand to wave and flicked him off instead. Izuku could only stand and stare at his hands.